The space station hung quietly above Jupiter, glowing with white lights against the endless black sky, and inside one of its cold metal docking bays, mechanic Leah Cruz stood alone beneath the belly of a cargo hauler named Ravenstar, her gloved hands gripping a worn-out scanner as it beeped softly. The night shift was dull, silent, and routine until her tool picked up something strange. At first, she thought it was just a scratch, maybe from micrometeoroid damage or a careless docking, but as her light flickered across the ship's lower hull, she noticed the mark shimmered faintly blue, like a scar carved not into metal, but into something deeper. The line was long and jagged, perfectly straight, glowing faintly in the darkness, as if drawn by a finger of lightning. Curious, she leaned in and brushed her gloved fingers across it, and the air around her shifted. A low hum filled the bay, so soft she felt it more than heard it, and then suddenly alien symbols began to appear all around the scratch, crawling across the ship's surface like glowing fireflies, forming words. She jerked back, heart pounding, but the shapes didn't stop, they danced, moving like liquid, writing a message in a language she had never seen. Before she could call anyone, something happened inside her head. A whisper, a voice not made of sound but of thought, clear and cold. "Do not go beyond the veil." Leah froze. The words echoed in her mind and her chest tightened. She backed away from the ship, staring at the glowing message, but just as quickly as it had come, the light began to fade. Within seconds, the hull turned dark and silent again, like nothing had happened at all. Her scanner beeped once more, confused by the readings, and she stared at it in disbelief. There were no alerts, no radiation, no breach, only a faint energy signature still lingering where the symbols had been. Leah's mind raced. This ship had only come from Saturn, a cargo run with no stops in deep space. Where could it have picked up an alien message? Her thoughts spun faster. She knew protocol demanded she report anything unusual, but something in her gut told her not to trust anyone just yet. She opened her wrist pad and checked the maintenance logs. No damage reports, no mentions of the scratch. She zoomed in on the location in the last docking scan. It hadn't been there before. She checked the ship's travel history again. One odd entry stood out. A short, unexplained course correction near Neptune's orbit, lasting only 14 minutes, with no comment or emergency logged. That wasn't normal. Ships didn't just drift off course near the outer rim of the solar system, especially not alone. Leah pulled her tool set together, eyes darting toward the now quiet ship, as if it might wake up again, and she slowly stepped back from Ravenstar, her thoughts full of questions. Was this a warning? A message meant for someone else that she had accidentally seen? Or something far more dangerous, something only humans could read? She looked around the empty bay, the silence now heavier than before. The air felt colder. Somewhere in the dark sky above Jupiter, something had touched this ship, and whatever it was, it had left a message for humanity. Or maybe just for her. Leah Cruz sat alone in her small station room, the dim light flickering above her as she stared at the blinking cursor on her screen, her fingers hesitating over the call request to Captain Relland Voss, the last man who had flown the Ravenstar before she found the strange glowing message. And even though he had retired weeks ago, she managed to find an old contact, ID buried in the hauler's records. When she pressed the call button, the screen buzzed for a long moment, then clicked, revealing the tired face of a man with silver hair and sharp, sunken eyes who looked like he hadn't slept in days. And when he saw Leah's name in the ship's ID, his jaw clenched, his voice flat and quiet as he said, "What do you want?" Leah hesitated, then asked him about the scratch on the hull, the strange light, the symbols that glowed when she touched it, and for a second she thought the connection had frozen because his face didn't move at all until he leaned in slowly, his voice even quieter than before, and said, "You saw it, too?" Leah's skin went cold as she nodded, asking what it meant. But the captain only shook his head and muttered, "You weren't supposed to touch it. It was meant to fade, meant to be forgotten," before turning away from the screen and warning her in a low voice to stop digging, to let it die in the dark, because some things in space weren't meant to be found, not by humans, not yet. And when she pressed for more, he ended the call without another word, leaving her alone again, with her heart racing. Refusing to back down, Leah searched the Raven Star's black box data and found something strange, a hidden energy spike recorded near Neptune's orbit, right before the scratch appeared on the hull and the ship's course had shifted slightly, for less than 15 minutes before snapping back to its assigned path. But there were no logs, no explanation, and the official report said the trip was smooth. So she copied the sensor data and sent it to an old academy friend, Dr. Malik Anwar, who now worked as a researcher at Luna Deep Space Array and had experience in deep space anomalies. When she finally reached him and explained what she saw, he looked curious at first, but when she showed him the recorded image of the glowing symbols, his face turned pale, and his voice trembled as he whispered, "Leah, where did you get this?" And she told him everything, from the scratch to the whisper in her mind, and Malik replied that he had seen something like this before once, in an old file sealed in a restricted database linked to a ship called the Arcfall, a human expedition vessel that vanished decades ago during Earth's early expansion into the outer solar system. The last message from the Arcfall was never made public, but Malik had managed to read a fragment once during a system test, and it contained similar symbols and a short, strange sentence. "They are sleeping. Do not disturb the dark." Leah felt her chest tighten with fear and wonder as Malik told her this, and she asked him what it meant, but he admitted he didn't know, only that the Arcfall had entered a region of space known by researchers as the Veil, a place beyond Neptune, where ships sometimes reported strange sensor echoes, black static, and feelings of being watched. Leah leaned back in her chair, connecting the dots Rel and Voss had passed near the same region, and that's when the scratch appeared. Malik warned her that if she kept chasing this mystery, she might find things she didn't want to see, but Leah couldn't stop now. She felt something deep in her bones. This message wasn't an accident, and it wasn't meant to be forgotten. It was a warning, maybe even a cry for help, and the fact that only she had seen it meant it was personal somehow. As the station around her hummed quietly, and Jupiter's red eye turned slowly in the sky outside, Leah made a decision. She would find out what touched the Raven Star, what whispered in her mind, and why it wanted humans to stay away from the Veil, because someone had to understand before it was too late. Dr. Malik worked all night, running the alien symbols through every language pattern, frequency wave, and translation engine available. while Leah sat across from him in his small office on Luna Deep Space Array, eyes tired but burning with focus. And as the sun rose over the moon's gray horizon, Malik finally looked up, his voice slow and shaken as he said, "I translated part of it. It's not just a warning. It's a message that was never supposed to be read." And when Leah leaned in, he showed her the decoded fragments. Phrases like "silence must remain," and "a sleepers stir when eyes turn toward them," and worst of all, "curiosity is the key that opens extinction," which made Leah's heart feel like stone, because every word sounded like it was written for humans, for the kind of species that always looked further, reached deeper, and pushed limits. Malik said the code was buried under a layer of interference, as if the message had been hidden behind a kind of digital curtain, and Leah remembered how the scratch had faded right after she touched it, almost like it had been a lock, and her touch had been the key that opened it again. Before she could say anything more, the lights in Malik's lab flickered, and the room went dark for 3 seconds. When the power came back, half the systems were frozen. The internal comms were scrambled, and Malik's security feed had been wiped clean. Someone had just hacked into the lunar array, and it wasn't a normal breach. Leah's wristpad buzzed. With a warning, "Unauthorized access detected" on her personal files, and a flashing alert showed that someone had entered her quarters on the Jupiter station, though she was no longer there. They were being watched. Leah and Malik fled the lab and moved to a secure room on the lower level, and as Malik isolated his system from the main network, he whispered that this message might be tied to something even older than humanity's. Reach into the stars, something buried in the records of ships that never returned. Leah felt a growing sense of dread. Whoever or whatever left the message didn't want it seen, and now that they had touched it, someone else knew. Malik pulled up hidden satellite logs and pointed to an anomaly captured 2 weeks ago, a black shape moving past the edge of Neptune's orbit, one that emitted no signal, absorbed all light, and left static trails in every telescope pointed at it. It wasn't a ship, it wasn't a natural body, and it wasn't there the next day. Leah stared at the fuzzy image, realizing that the shape was near the exact location the Raven Star had drifted toward. And then she remembered something Project Starwake, the deep space expedition that had launched last week, was headed in that direction. She tried to contact someone at Mission Command to warn them, but her calls were blocked, and the mission channel refused her access. It was clear now. Not only was someone trying to erase the message, they were pushing Starwake closer to the danger. Desperate, Leah and Malik managed to break through a backup relay and beam a signal toward Starwake's ship, embedding a copy of the alien message and a translated warning. They waited for a reply, but none came. Hours passed. Then, just before dawn, a strange new signal arrived, not from Starwake, not from Earth, but from deep space. It was short, cold, and written in the same glowing script Leah had seen on the Raven Star's hull, and when Malik translated it, the message read, "You heard. You came. You woke them." The air in the room felt suddenly thinner, like space. Itself was closing in, and as Malik stared at the screen, he said something Leah would never forget. This wasn't a warning. It was a test to see who would notice, who would try to understand, who would go further. Leah felt sick as she realized the truth. The scratch wasn't damage, it was bait. a trap laid across time, waiting for human hands to unlock it. Now the door had opened, and something old, silent, and watching had started to stir in the dark. Leah stared at the strange reply glowing on the screen, her breath shallow as the words burned in her mind. You heard. You came. You woke them. And next to her, Dr. Malik sat frozen, his fingers hovering above the keys, unsure what to do next, because this message didn't come from any known ship, station, or probe, and its signal was so strong and direct. It pierced through jamming fields, shielded networks, and even private lines like it knew exactly where to find them. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, but then Leah broke the silence and said they had to warn Earth, the Space Council, anyone who would listen before it was too late, because Project Starwake was still heading straight toward the black region near Neptune's orbit, the place they now knew as the Veil, and no one on board had any idea what was waiting out there. Malik quickly copied the decoded warning, along with the reply signal, and tried to send it through secure channels, but the files kept getting blocked, firewalls sprang up instantly, and one by one their access codes were revoked, as if someone high above had already decided this truth couldn't be shared. Leah didn't stop. She switched to old comm relays, ghost satellites, and unused beacons, finally managing to reach a civilian broadcast tower near Mars, which she hacked to spread the message wide across the solar network, and in seconds, the symbols, the translation, and the growing danger were live on every public channel. People across Earth, Luna, and Mars saw it. Some laughed, some panicked, and some stayed silent, but those who had seen strange things in deep space before, they understood. As chaos grew online, power grids in major colonies flickered. AI started speaking in broken sentences, and nav systems spun out false star paths, like they were being scrambled by something big and silent pressing against the edge of human space. And a new message appeared, this one visual. A stream of frames, blinking fast, showing a map of the stars but warped, twisted, showing a point far beyond Neptune, where the stars themselves looked like they were being pulled inward toward a single dark spot. Malik whispered that it matched an ancient chart from long-abandoned records, back when humans first began interstellar probes and launched more than half of them near the Veil, all marked down as system failures. Leah recognized a pattern in the message. It was a sealed government glyph, one only used for lost or denied missions. She broke into the Luna archives and found the source. An old log entry from the first ever jump ship beyond the solar border. The HFY, long declared missing. Its final transmission was stored in fragments, but it matched the alien symbols exactly. Malik translated it with shaking hands, reading the words out loud. We were welcomed, then warned, then erased. One returns to warn the next. The Arcfall had seen something beyond human understanding, and someone or something had sent it back with the message buried deep in ship metal, like a memory encoded into hull plating, waiting to be reawakened by human curiosity. Leah realized the Raven Star must have crossed paths with some remnant of the Arcfall's trail, maybe a drifting artifact, a dust cloud, or even the remains of the ship itself, just long enough to get marked, like an old grave touched by a new visitor. And now something new. They had seen the warning. Across deep space, strange signals increased, and reports from ships near the edge of the system described strange dreams, patterns in the stars and mechanical voices whispering about the eye that opens only when called. On board Starwake, the crew stopped responding to routine messages, and encrypted logs leaked strange behavior, crew members walking in circles, seeing shapes in blank screens, or hearing music with no source. Leah knew she had only one chance left. She couldn't reach the council. She couldn't trust the networks. But she could do what humans always did best: act, even when it was dangerous. She and Malik prepped an old jump shuttle hidden beneath Luna's surface, a relic from the Arcfall era, with its own sealed systems and deep-range drive, and they launched into the black with one mission: reach Starwake before it crossed into the Veil, before it woke whatever waited in that place again. As they rose above the moon, the stars pulsed like something alive, and a final message came through Leah's personal com. No source, no frequency, just one quiet sentence spoken. In her own voice, you were warned. Now you must choose. The old jump shuttle shook as it tore through space at speeds no longer legal under modern laws, its shields flickering against the dark waves near Neptune's orbit, and inside the cramped cockpit, Leah Cruz held the controls tight while Malik monitored the systems, both of them staring ahead at the vast, empty void called the Veil, a place no ship ever returned from, a place older than human travel, older maybe than human memory itself. As they approached the edge, warning lights blinked red and a soft static began to crawl across their comms. Not just noise, but almost like whispers too low to hear. And then they saw at Starwake a sleek silver ship hanging just kilometers from the border of the black zone, its engines cold, its lights dim, and no signals being sent. Leah brought the shuttle close and hailed them, but there was no reply, only silence and strange echoes from inside. And when they docked and entered, through the airlock, the halls of Starwake were still and heavy, like the ship had been paused mid-breath. Crew members stood inside, awake but unmoving, eyes open but empty, and as Leah stepped closer to one, a woman in uniform turned slowly to her and whispered, "The stars are singing," before going silent again, like a puppet with its strings. Cut. Malik rushed to the bridge and downloaded the ship's logs. They showed rising confusion, navigation errors, and strange dreams where all the stars in the sky vanished, except one dark eye that opened slowly and stared forever. Leah triggered the emergency override and shut down the ship's course program, just minutes before it would have crossed into the dark. And then a sharp voice echoed through every corridor, not from the speakers, but from inside their own heads. You choose to return. You were given the line. You step back, or vanish like the others. Leah grabbed the captain's logs and security feeds, and from them she pieced together the truth. The Arcfall hadn't just vanished. It had been let in, allowed to see what lay beyond the veil, but what it saw had destroyed it from the inside. Not with weapons, not with war, but with the terrible weight of knowing something humans were never meant to know. That space beyond a point is not empty but alive, not with life as we know it, but with ancient watchers that sleep in silence, and do not wish to be seen. The message and the scratch, the glowing warning, the whisper, these were not threats, but boundaries set not in fear, but in mercy, drawn by something that understood what knowledge could do to a young race like humanity. Leah looked at Malik and said quietly, "We have to go back." He nodded, and they returned to their shuttle, slowly pulling away from Starwake. guiding it back with them as the black edge behind them pulsed once, like the flicker of a great eye closing again. As they left, the strange signals faded, the whispers went silent, and the crew of Starwake began to breathe normally again, as if a great weight had lifted from them. Back on Earth, the message Leah sent from orbit, her full report, the recordings, the decoded alien text, the dreams, and the ancient log from the Arkfall were received. But the Council marked it all as restricted level Omega, hidden from the public, locked away to be reviewed by those who already knew the line existed and had sworn to protect it. Leah returned quietly to Luna. No medals, no news reports, no. Thanks only the quiet peace of someone who had seen the edge of the dark and chosen to pull others back from it. Later, when a group of young explorers spoke of launching missions beyond the Veil, her name was mentioned but always followed by silence, and when asked what she saw out there, she only ever said one thing: "We are not alone, but we are not." Ready, some doors stay closed not because of fear, but because of love, and the stars above stayed quiet, twinkling like they always had, while the dark beyond them waited, as patient and still as it had been since time began.